This is that ASMR guy, and I'm back with another album review. But before we get into that, I wanted to start off by saying thank you for all the support that I got in 2024. The channel reached over 100 subscribers, and I'm very appreciative to all the support that I've been receiving. It definitely inspires me to keep going. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make any videos last year. It just happened to be a very busy year for me. I'm hoping to come back and start making more videos here in 2025. And with all that out of the way, the album we're going to be talking about today is Damnation by the band Opeth. Damnation was released on April 22nd, 2003. It features Michael Ackerfeld on vocals and guitar, Peter Lindgren on guitar, Martin Mendez on bass, and Martin Lopez on drums. Produced by Steven Wilson, who would go on to produce other Opeth albums such as Heritage and Pale Communion. And thinking about that, there definitely is a similar feel in all of those albums. I know that when listening to Heritage and Pale Communion, I can definitely feel that kind of somber tone, and some of the effects feel similar on all of those albums. The album starts off with a track called Window Pane. I love this opening song. It has a really somber and kind of signature sounding chord for a band like Opeth. The lyrics are also fairly interesting as well. Apparently, Michael got the inspiration for this song while he was hanging out with some friends, and he saw an old man in a window and was wondering what he was doing out there, and started thinking about the way that older people in our society get left behind and forgotten, oftentimes. It's a very beautiful, a very somber track. But as you'll see here, the somber element keeps going. And at this point, you might be wondering, wait, where's all the heavy stuff? I mean, this is an Opeth album, right? But that's actually one of the more interesting things about this record, is that there's not any heavy death metal on here at all. It's acoustic, but I use the term acoustic with quotes because it's not like there's no electric guitar on this album at all. There's a lot actually, but there's no death metal. It's just the more somber, lighter moments in between the heavy parts that you find on a lot of Opeth tracks. With that in mind, we go on to In My Time of Need. Michael is doing a kind of unique vocal pattern during the verses on this song, where he's singing on the offbeats and then layers some harmony parts on top of that. It makes for a very unique groove that the song has. kind of showing you to not be afraid. This track is personally one of my favorites off of this album. I love the vocal melody that Michael is using. It's very haunting, and there's an element of vulnerability in his voice that really is on display with this track. And then next, we have the song Closure. Reminds me of The Devil's Orchard, if you've ever listened to Heritage before. It adds a little bit of variety in the fact that when you get within the first couple of minutes of the song, there's a little bit more groove, it's a little bit more upbeat. It's kind of nice to have that though, just because within an album like this, it can feel very slow and very monotonous after a while if it's just one depressing track after another. You kind of need something to mix up the pace a little. I think Closure does that pretty well. I love the cool percussion stuff that Martin Lopez is doing on this track. He's got some impressive fills. Overall, his approach to the drums on this record is very good. I love he has some really nice fills overall, but they're done tastefully. It doesn't sound like he's overplaying at any point, but he does complement what's going on in the music very well. Next up is the track Hope Leaves. This is another favorite of mine off of this album. It's a little bit more straightforward than Closure, so we're back to more familiar ground. I really enjoy the keyboard synth layering and the choir fade out at the end. Lyrical themes is just general depression, but it's kind of a recurring theme in this album. Really beautiful. I really love the overall nature of this track. Then next we have To Rid the Disease. I think Michael's vocals on this album really are what help it stand out. I would almost say it's a little too similar to some of the other tracks on this album, like Hope Leaves and In My Time of Need. But once you get to the second half of the song, there is a little interlude there that's kind of nice and a little bit different from some of the stuff you've heard earlier. Features piano mostly in the second half. Overall, it's a pretty good song, but it's kind of a mix of some stuff that we've already heard before, and it just takes a little bit too long to get to that interlude part. Overall, though, it's a good track. And then next we have Ending Credits. This one doesn't really have any vocals on it. It's just an instrumental, almost kind of like a just jam between the acoustic guitar and the drums. I think there's a bass on here too. And it's one of those that sounds just kind of like it was going to be part of a larger song, which I think a lot of these were supposed to be used in other Opeth songs, but they just couldn't find a place for them. And it's almost kind of like setting up the end of the album. But then after that, we have one more track called Weakness. it's just a keyboard with this like organ effect on it, creating this kind of like haunted carnival kind of feel. And then Michael's voice is great as always. If it was up to me though, personally I would switch where weakness and ending credits go. But I guess the way that they're aligned on this record, you could say that weakness is kind of like an epilogue. And in that way, I think it works very well. Overall, I give this album an exceptional rating. I absolutely love this record. I love the fact that Opeth, in the middle of gaining a lot of attention for being a death metal band, follows that up with creating a record that has no death metal elements in it at all, and yet they're still able to retain their unique style. One of the things that really impresses me about Opeth is how, regardless of what they're doing, you still can tell it's them. Like when you listen to Opeth, you know it's Opeth. You can't really find a lot of other bands that are doing these kind of weird chord progressions and mixing all these little things together. I think they did an amazing job with it, particularly on this album. Definitely recommend it for anyone who is looking for something with almost kind of like a folk atmosphere, but a very like dark folk atmosphere. It's an amazing record. And with that, that's about all I got. Feel free to let me know what you thought of this album in the comment section. I'm hoping to make some more album reviews in the future. And I got other video ideas planned besides just the reviews as well. Thanks for listening. Feel free to give this video a like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. I'm going to be making more of it. Until then, this is that ASMR guy saying thanks for listening and get some sleep.